Sean Thornton is a husband, a father, an engineer, and now a Libertarian candidate for Charleston County Council's District 7 seat, which covers parts of West Ashley. Today, I talk one-on-one with Sean for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Sean Thornton, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I know that you are a husband, a father, and an engineer here in Charleston, and have been an engineer here in Charleston since 2012. Who else is Sean Thornton these days?
I am the chair of the South Carolina Libertarian Party. That takes up pretty much all the rest of the extra time that I have. And then, of course, I'm running for Charleston County Council, District 7. And, it's a long shot. I'm a Libertarian, but I'm definitely hopeful.
And you talk about being obviously the chairman of the South Carolina Libertarian Party. What is the state of the Libertarian Party as you know it?
Well, we're doing pretty good. We've been getting more votes every election cycle. I think last time we had a few people run for office here in the state that got close to or over 20% of the vote in their races, which it's not winning, but it's definitely substantial. Our presidential candidate this year, Jo Jorgensen, she's really great. She's actually from here in South Carolina. She's a professor up at Clemson. And then our vice presidential candidate, Spike Cohen, he's from Myrtle Beach, so also South Carolina. So we're pretty excited about that here in the state.
And you talk about obviously running for Charleston County Council's District 7 seat, and you said, hey, it's a long shot. But why are you taking a shot?
Well, I feel like I've got a lot of good ideas for local government. As an engineer, I think outside the box. That's what I do. I've done it my whole life. And I see, city and county governments all over the country, they just try the same things and they always get the same results, and they complain when the results aren't better. And I think that's what's needed is somebody with outside the box thinking, somebody with new ideas. And I think I'm that guy.
Well, let me ask you this. How long have you been living in District 7?
I've been in District 7 since 2013. When we first got to Charleston, we were up in Hanahan. We were actually in Berkeley County. We lived there for, I think, a year, and then we moved here to District 7. We've been here pretty much ever since.
And as you know, the current council member for the District 7 area is Councilman Moody. On what issues do you and Councilman Moody differ?
Mostly on, spending, I guess. His approach is pretty much the standard approach. Let's take all the money that we've got and let's try to spend it on this project, spend it on that project. And what I would rather see us do, instead of have a central control at the county level to decide what we do with the money, actually lower the taxes, let the people keep more of their money, and then let the individuals actually choose what they want to do. So take county services, for example. Economics has long since proven that monopoly is always bad for the customer. Monopoly causes price to be high, it causes quality to be low, but for all county and city services, those are essentially monopolies. There's no competition in the marketplace. So what I would propose to do instead of having one central repository for all that stuff is actually compete it on the open market. For waste collection, for example, there's a few places where waste collection has been fully demunicipalized, if you'll accept that that's a word, and you have multiple competing providers, and because the waste servicer now has to actually please the customer rather than just do the job mandated by the county, they have to actually do a good job. They have to do it more affordable than their competitor. They have to do it in a better quality than their competitor, and so the result is always that the customer, the taxpayer, the people who just live in the county, they get better service, they end up spending less, and that's essentially what I would propose to do with everything.
But then what's the quality of life in District 7?
It's pretty good. It's varied. We've got various parts of West Ashley, so we've got some of the poorer neighborhoods, and we've got some of the more affluent neighborhoods. But it seems pretty good. I really like it out here.
And let me turn to the issues that you just mentioned a second ago. Let me talk to you about one of them, flooding mitigation. What type of resources would you use to make certain that the county's flooding mitigation efforts actually work?
So flooding, that's a good one. one of the issues that we don't really talk about when it comes to flooding is development, and what exactly development does. A full-grown tree will actually consume, I think it's like 65 gallons of water every day. So if you've got, a whole quarter-acre lot with dozens of trees on it, that's hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water that are absorbed up out of the ground to feed the tree. So when you cut down all these trees, then that's water that you're not pulling out of the ground. And then if you raise the ground in order to level it and actually build on it, then you cause all of that water not only to not be absorbed, but to run off into the surrounding areas. And so that's going to make your flooding worse. Obviously, we can't stop development. Development is a good thing. It brings people here. It boosts our economy. It provides jobs. So you don't want to stop development, but you need to do development responsibly. And the way I see the county approaching it is they just have zoning laws and they have boards of approval. And what that does is that creates a false sense of security. You end up thinking, oh, well, the county said it was okay for this developer to go ahead and go forward with this plan, so it must be safe. That's fine. But then if the county is not experts, the county is just elected politicians who are just doing what they feel is best. And so you end up with development not being necessarily so safe for the neighbors, and development does make the flooding worse. So what you need to do in order to actually mitigate development is find a way for the people who are who end up having to deal with more flooding. They need to be able to have recourse against their new developer neighbors who have caused that flooding. And we have a body of case law going back generations called nuisance law. And basically it says that if somebody on adjacent property does something to their property that eliminates or reduces your property value, you can actually take them to court in a civil suit to try to recover those damages. And I think if we encourage that, rather than just putting a stamp of approval on this development or denying that development, if we actually encourage people to look at their flooding, to notice that it's getting worse because an apartment complex just moved in next door, if we encourage people to then seek recourse directly through the courts, I think that you'll find that developers are going to be much more responsible because they don't want to be taken to court. And you're going to end up finding that flooding is a lot less. So that's basically how I would approach the flooding issue that we have.
And what recourse should District 7 take right now?
Well, we have a lot of new development moving in, and we've definitely seen flooding getting worse. So I would say exactly that. I would say anybody who's noticed that their flooding in their neighborhood has gotten worse, look at the surrounding areas, see who it is who has filled in the marshes, who has cut down the trees, who has raised the ground and caused more rainwater runoff to come into your neighborhood, and take them to court. That's definitely what I would suggest doing.
And as a libertarian, how do you look at fill and bill?
I think that it's fine. I mean, it's definitely got the flooding issues, like I mentioned. But if you can do it safely, if you can do it in a way that doesn't harm your neighbors, then I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think so. As a libertarian, the main thing that we're concerned about is just defending people's rights. People have a right to life, they have a right to liberty, they have a right to property. And so if what you're doing on the land, filling and building, if that doesn't hurt someone else's life, liberty, or property, then it's not really any of my business, and I think it's fine. But if it does hurt someone else's life, liberty, or property, then I definitely think that person needs to have recourse to take legal action and have their rights upheld.
And what zoning laws would you change right now if you were on county council?
So a lot of cities, Minneapolis, I think, just passed this also. They're getting rid of the single-family district, and so some people are concerned that means that you will no longer be able to have single-family homes, but that's not actually what that means. That means that if you are in a place that was historically a single-family lot, you are now able, if you want to build an additional unit on that lot, you can put an apartment in the back for your mother-in-law, or you can subdivide to have an additional lot that you can sell off or rent out. That would probably be where I would start. But ideally, I would like to get rid of all zoning laws. Zoning laws, they are only about 100 years old, and they were actually founded in racism. The whole point of zoning was to keep some people in one area and other people in another area and keep them segregated. And even though we always talk about like, oh, we need zoning so that we don't have a slaughterhouse opening up next to a perfumery. That's not actually what zoning ever actually does. Zoning just keeps people segregated. It keeps people economically segregated. It causes more traffic because now you have to drive from your residential district to your commercial district and back. So it creates more traffic. It creates more pollution because of the traffic. Zoning is just, it has a whole bunch of problems, and it's never actually been demonstrated to be effective at addressing the problems that it claims to address. One really interesting case is Houston. The city of Houston has no zoning laws, never has had any zoning laws, and it's widely regarded as one of the most efficiently laid out cities in the country, which is wild because no one has actually planned it, no one has actually laid it out. It's just been the operation of the open market, just individuals doing what they think is best. And so you've got really walkable neighborhoods. You've got people that some places have HOAs if they want to make sure that the neighborhood has a certain aesthetic. Other places where, you know, they don't care so much. They're like, hey, I'd love to have a boat in my front yard, and they don't have restrictions in their particular neighborhood. And so you get really a nice customization, whatever kind of aesthetic you want in a neighborhood, whatever features you want, walkability, access to nightlife, access to hospitals, access to shopping. You have that somewhere because there are people who want it, and so the market provides. And so that's what I would do with zoning laws. I would actually just start rolling back all of them so that we could let the market take its course and have just a more efficient layout of the city, and that would resolve a lot of our traffic and pollution problems.
What would you replace those zoning laws with?
So Houston has what's called deed restrictions. And the deed restrictions are whenever a developer builds a new subdivision, let's say, they include into the sales contract that you have to do certain things or can't do certain things with the property for a certain number of years. And so that way it's actually in the contract, and you can look at it and be like, oh, I do like that, so I'm going to buy in this neighborhood, or oh, I don't like that, I'm not going to buy in this neighborhood, I'll buy in a different one. And so that kind of has the same effect as a zoning law, except that it leaves the choice up to the individual consumer. And those laws, those deed restrictions, they expire after a certain amount of time, and you can then choose to renew them with your neighbors through a private voluntary contract, or you can choose to let them lapse. And that's something that everybody knows going in, and so it leaves full choice up to the actual person who buys in that neighborhood. They actually get to choose what they want to do with their land. So that's the system that I would probably move towards.
How many votes will you secure to make on county council to make certain that you can replace these zoning laws?
I probably have to get a few. Obviously, one councilman can't do it all on his own. But I think that if I'm elected, I'll be able to sit down with the other members of the council, and they've probably not ever even considered this idea. And I can show them the data, I can show them the facts and the logic. And I think that if we have an honest discussion and honestly think about it, I think I'll be able to convince most, or maybe even all of the other councilmen that this is the way to go. Especially if I am elected, I am a libertarian, I do have radical ideas. I think if I do actually get elected, that's kind of a mandate. Clearly my ideas resonate with people, at least in this district, so they have merit, and they'd definitely be worth looking at by the other council members.
How many drainage improvement projects are needed for District 7?
I don't have a number. I know that my neighborhood is fine. We're right over here up against Long Branch Creek, but the drainage seems fine here. There are some apartment complexes starting to go in right around the corner here. We got Carolina Bay is definitely built up a lot. There's some stuff over on by Roper. They're putting in some things there. So I guess I'll have to let you know. We'll have to see what the effect of those is in the long term.
And I know money has been secured for funding for the county portion of the DuPont Wapu drainage projects. How should that project move forward in your mind?
If the funding has already been secured, then I would say let's go ahead and just let it go, let it keep on going. But I wouldn't want to raise any additional funding for projects like that. I would want to go to a voluntary market-oriented solution where the individual actors actually get to choose what they want to do with their property.
What solution do you have now?
The same as I mentioned before, where once you start having flooding on your property and your property value is decreased because of that civil suit against the people who are responsible for it.
Okay. And the former Church Creek Piggly Wiggly parcel, how do you hope this parcel will bring relief to the Church Creek drainage basin?
I guess I would hope that would be sold off to a private company or a private investor or private individual, just to do with whatever they like.
Okay. And how would you work with the St. Andrews Public Service District, obviously, to construct a new fire station?
So fire is another one of those municipal services that I think would be best done on the free market. So I would favor a plan to start to sell off the assets of the fire department to any private businesses that would be interested in being fire service. And so the result would then be that you would have multiple competing fire companies, and so you end up with the natural result of competition, lower cost, higher quality of service. That's what I would do.
And let me turn to the Old Town District and Orange Grove Road. As you know, how should the design for that improvement look?
Again, private voluntary action. As far as roads go, I would in fact favor what's called abandonment. The county can abandon roads to the adjacent property owners. That is something that does happen from time to time, and so I would just favor doing that a lot.
Okay.
What that would do is allow control of the roadway by the actual people who use that roadway. And so if they wanted to have it wider, they could have it wider. If they wanted to have speed bumps, they could have speed bumps. And if they didn't want to do their own maintenance, they could sell it off to somebody else who did care about doing road maintenance, road expansion.
Okay. And if elected, how many sidewalk connectivity projects would you create for District 7?
So again, I would say the same answer. I would any land where the county has the right of way or an easement, I would abandon that right of way, that easement, to the local property owners. And if they wanted to install a sidewalk, I would be thrilled if they wanted to do that. And if they didn't want to install a sidewalk on their land, then that's their choice because it's theirs.
Okay. And how many neighborhoods in District 7 actually need repaving right now?
I don't know if any of them really need repaving. There may be one or two. I don't drive on all the roads all the time, but any neighborhood that I've been in recently, it's all been fine.
Okay. 526. Do you support it?
You said 526?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So as I understand it, the funding for that has long since been raised. So if we've already taxed the people for it, we should go ahead and give them what we promised and actually do it. Again, though, if we haven't raised enough money for it, I would favor giving the money back and then encouraging private voluntary action. If the people want to have a continuation of 526, then let's abandon the easements, abandon the rights of way, abandon the roadway to adjacent property owners, and let's let the market decide who wants to sell their land, who wants to keep their land, who wants to put up a tollway or a user fee bridge or whatever. Let's just let the market take its course, because the market is definitely always going to be the most efficient planner of layout, including transportation.
But then what should be the preferred alternative for the project expansion in your mind?
I mean, I like the idea, honestly, of having a 526 that goes to James Island. And James Island traffic is definitely challenging. I know right here, so we're not, our neighborhood, I said Long Branch Creek, every now and then we want to head over to like Johns Island, and my goodness, the traffic right there is just astounding. So I definitely think it makes sense, especially if we've already raised the money for it. It definitely makes sense to go ahead and have 526 continue. If we didn't have 526, then I think that if a private investment wanted to start looking at mass transit, rail, I don't know if subterranean rail is really feasible here this close to sea level, but I know anytime I'm in New York or Boston or DC, I love using the mass transit. So if we could get mass transit, that'd be great. But again, I wouldn't favor taxing the people for it and forcing them to have mass transit. I would favor abandoning the roadways so that there would actually be competition in transportation. And that way the market could figure out what is it that the people actually want, what will they use, what will they pay for, what will be sustainable, based on their actual desires and needs.
And what environmental impacts do you that you are actually concerned about right now, I should say?
Well, definitely, we've talked about flooding. That's the cutting down of trees and fill and build. While it is something that I would be fine with somebody doing on their property if they can do it without harming others, I don't see there being a way to really do that without harming others. So that definitely is a concern. And then traffic. Traffic here. I've been in other cities. Traffic here is nothing compared to DC and New York, but it's still traffic. And it is unnecessary. We don't really need to have the city laid out the way it is. We don't need to have so much commuting. And traffic just generates pollution. Traffic puts greenhouse gases in the air. And I know there's a lot of people who think that global warming is a hoax. But even if it is, we should be good stewards of our earth that we have. We shouldn't just dump waste gases into the air, whether they're having a sinister effect or not. So that's definitely something that I would be concerned about. If we could reduce traffic, we could reduce the emission of gases and keep the air clean.
And what concept would you use to actually further public transportation in District 7?
So again, competition in transportation. So we have this perception that using the roads is free. They feel free because we pay for them through taxes. But if roadways actually were abandoned to private owners, then the private owners would have to figure out how to pay for them somehow. And so they would do it through subscriptions or through tolls, which would be really easy to collect because you've got RFID tags and Internet of Things and stuff now. So you wouldn't have to have toll booths everywhere. But whatever the owners of the roadways would choose to do would actually reveal what the real cost of having a road is. And once the consumers of transportation were able to see how expensive that is, they might be looking for something else. They might start looking for buses, or they might start looking for rail, or they might start looking for helicopter rides, or a massive conveyor belt that moved them from one part of town to the other. Whatever they wanted, and any company that could come in and provide any sort of transportation service that was a better service at a lower cost, people would absolutely use that. So I know that if that were rail, it would definitely I would use it. But if it were buses, I'd probably use that. If it were still cars, I'd use that. I'm like everybody else. I'm going to use whatever feels the cheapest and most convenient. And right now, the only thing that we really have is driving on the roads. So that's what I'm using.
And what plan is ideal for the Epic Center, better known right now as Citadel Mall?
Again, whatever the owners of the property want to do is fine by me. I think it would be a great hub for transportation. And that would make a great spot for like a bus transfer center or a subway station or a rail station. But it could also be a good spot for a park. Make a good park and ride location. It's right there at the base of 526. I think whoever owns it, whatever they want to do with it is fine with me, as long as they can do so again without harming the life, liberty, or property of their neighbors.
Sean Thornton, thank you so much for your time, and again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.